The story of Candyman is so perennial, and that's part of the reason why it's exciting to tell it in any time period. From the origin of the story itself in the context of the first film, in the 1890s to now, what we're talking about, I think, is the cycles of violence and how history repeats itself and how we collectively grieve and collectively process trauma, which is through stories. So I think it's always a time to tell a story like Candyman, which is, kind of the big tragedy of the tale in the first place. Candyman was just like a real sort of urban legend when I was growing up. It wasn't necessarily just attached to the movie. It felt very present. I went to school right next to the projects. I lived across the street from the projects. And so for us, Candyman was just hanging out over, across the street from us. And so I think the first time I saw it was in elementary school. But this was after I'd already kind of lived with the idea of there being some demon ghost man killing people in the project. So I think my first time seeing the movie was like terrifying, as it is for most people, but I'd already kind of had this lore in my head. So it was kind of like connecting the dots. I was like, oh, that's Candyman. I see, I get it. I basically looked to history, and they're stories that I already knew, stories that I found as I was doing research, that I wanted to take inspiration from. I didn't want to take these people's lives and say they're part of the Candyman lore, but just to be inspired by things that had actually happened and that related to our story. And really, it was because I wanted to show how prevalent, common these horrific events are, and how they're just, this is a straight line from Danny Robitaille to Anthony and all the people in between. So for me, it was really necessary to take inspiration from real life, but also not co-opt a story and put it into our narrative. So I think that was also a balance to strike. When we meet Anthony at the beginning of the film, he's an artist. He has a great girlfriend. He just moved in to this great apartment, sort of part of this wave of gentrification in the Cabrini Green neighborhood. And he has had sort of a creative block for 2 years. He hasn't really been able to create, and part of that is because he's grappling with his identity, not just as a person, but as as an artist working in a very white industry, as someone who's trying to contend with their past, and in the context of the film, as someone who has to contend with supernatural entities. So the film sees him kind of go on this journey of self-actualization, sort of a coming of age, but with the added weight of this history that he uncovers. We had 2 artists do Anthony's work because we really wanted to show his early work, and then the work that he makes in the film, and how different he is and how he's being changed, not only through his own search and journey, but also maybe by demon ghost murderers. Yeah. How do you maintain tension when as soon as you say a 5th Candyman, the people who said it are going to die? How do you prolong that? How do you make that exciting to watch every time it happens? Also, how do you make someone saying Candyman 5 times interesting every time it happens in the movie? So it was really fun to kind of figure out different ways to do them, and also different scenarios and different people it would happen to, and different ways that they say Candyman 5 times, and from a practical workflow point of view, we did a lot of previs, in particular because mirrors were so important, obviously, to the movie, and so trying to figure out how to shoot the reflection of a reflection where in space Candyman would be and all that stuff was really complicated. So previs was really really helpful. And then on the day, it was really about putting all the parts together, and then the actors having fun with their gruesome deaths. With Candyman, with talking about unwilling martyrs, I wanted to make sure that in the rush to sort of process what happened and to choose a side and to create sense of something horrifying, that we don't forget the life of the person who was harmed, who was killed. Because a martyr is a powerful symbol, a monster is a powerful symbol, but at the end of the day, if the name isn't remembered, then then what are we really talking about? Because the name, the person, the life that was lost, that's the most important thing. And so, you know, in Candyman, it's say his name, say his name, say his name. People say Candyman, but they don't say the name of Dana Robitaille or Anthony McCoy. And so that was commentary on that as well. And also on like what's happening in the movement now, which is so powerful, which is like, say the name of the person, say Breonna Taylor, say Jacob Blake, you know, which I think is really powerful and really important, and what I wanted to talk more about in relation to Candyman, which is that he's not a monster, he's not a martyr, he's Danny Robitaille, a painter who lost his life, or he's Anthony McCoy, a painter and awkward dude who lost his life, you know. I want to talk about humanity. Well, I hope the audiences get, you know, wrapped up in the story. I hope they can engage with and identify with the main characters and to feel what they're feeling. I want them to be scared. I want them to be sad, and I want them to understand, you know, something more than they knew before, or they understood before walking into the film. That might be too much to ask, but I just hope people leave it changed, but at the very least, thinking more.